We've talked we had very long and in-depth discussion about what we need to do. It's very overwhelming to extricate ourselves from the Indian Act. It's an overwhelming task, and whether we think cynically or we think practically about it, politics is about he understands the complex path we must take in order to remove ourselves from the Indian Act, the way forward for our people. I thank you very much for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, I present our horns.
Good late afternoon, respected elders, veterans, chiefs, head persons, delegates, and ladies and gentlemen that are in the room here. Just a little bit about myself. Lynn did go into a little bit. I'm from Pipot First Nation. We're about 25 minutes north of Regina. Really beautiful land. But I grew up in the area, grew up on the reserve. Went to residential school for 4 years, moved on to university in Regina. And when I was done at university, I was hired with the Ministry of Learning for a couple of years as a services coordinator, and then moved on to a communications consultant position with one of the Crown corporations before being hired as a HR consultant with Sask Gaming Corporation, which operates casinos Regina and Moose Jaw. And I resigned from that when I was elected chief back in my community in 2010. So I served out 2 terms as chief, and then a few months back I stepped back and let one of my good friends take over the reins, and where I'm still a councillor, so I'm still representing my community. So again, I want to acknowledge our elders for the ceremony this morning, for what they did for all of us, to think of the choice that we have here in the next day or so. I want to start off by saying we're in very troubling times for a lot of very different reasons. The biggest reason is our relationship with the governments. And it's been said before, our adversaries are not inside this room. They're not. Our adversaries that we have to deal with are beyond these walls, in provincial government, federal government, and industry, coming into our lands and taking and benefiting, and as was said earlier, leaving us behind to flail in the wind. That is not the treaty relationship. And one of my things that I'm big on is redefining the relationship, because we have to do that. We don't have to do that for political purposes or anything like that. We have to do that because that's what our community and our people need. And when I talk about redefining that relationship, that comes back to those contribution agreements, those CFAs, those FTAs, 3-year, 5-year, whatever it may be. That agreement that we get from government is not based on treaty. It has nothing to do with treaty. Look at those agreements. Those are the kind of relationships that they have with cities, with towns, with rural municipalities. That's not who we are. The heads of their people, the heads of their nation came to us as our chiefs, the heads of our nation, to get access to these lands so that they could benefit. They wanted to share, and that's what we based everything that we did on, was sharing. But we need to change that, because like I said, right now, we're being treated like an extension of one of their ministries, the Ministry of Indian Affairs, ANSI, whatever you want to call it. We need to change that, because that gets us nowhere. And one of the biggest challenges is unity. Because if you look at all of our communities, we're all at different points of progression. We're all at different points of community development. At the time of treaty, in 1874, you look at all of our communities that got into treaty in Fort Capel, in our Treaty 4 area, every community was at the same point of progression, because there wasn't necessarily a community that had more than others. And one of the teachings in our community is that we can't leave people behind. We have to make sure that all of our people move together as one. So it was easy to have that collective thinking back then because everyone was at the same point. And we need to figure out a strategy how to do that. One of the biggest points in realizing that, the National Resource Transfer Agreement, and getting a solution, getting a positive result from that, because right now we don't have that. Our communities, every year, the government gives us these agreements, and they're not enough. We know they're not enough. We don't have to explain why they're not enough. They're just not enough. But we do the best we can to do it, and a lot of us do it very well. And that's something to be proud of. But at the same time, we're doing this government a favor by doing it well. That's what we have to think about. So when I talk about redefining that relationship, at some point, we have to make a decision. So I commend the communities such as Pepeeksis, Onion Lake, Thunderchild for not signing those contribution agreements, because that was not based on money. That was based on redefining the relationship that we have. As was said, we need a relationship based on treaty. We need funding based on treaty. We don't need to be part of this column of parliamentary structure that Canada has. We go over here and just a straight treaty structure. As was said, you fund us and we'll identify the priorities in our communities, because that's what we need to do. You know, all the issues that we face. I also want to commend the city of Winnipeg, even the city of Saskatoon here, just recently, for putting a motion there on the table and passing it to support an inquiry for our missing and murdered women and girls. I want to commend them for that. And every one of us that comes up here is going to support that. And I know that it's going to get done. It is going to be done. Because a lot of our families and our communities need that closure. A lot of them need that closure. And that is going to help them get there. That is going to be a tool to help them get there. When it comes down to these issues that we talk about, we need to stand together. We need that unity. We accomplished so much in the past by that collective thinking. That unity is important, which is why if you've ever been able to experience how we've conducted ourselves in the last month, you'll know that we put that priority first. We put that unity first. Because after this is all done, we have to move forward together. But part of that challenge is engaging leadership here. When we look around in this forum and we see how many of our leaders, I know we as leaders, we get busy. I've experienced that myself. But in the big picture of what we need to do, we have to be here, because there are very important issues that our members, our people rely on us to get done. So we have to be here. And part of that I want to work towards, because I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that change. I want to be a part of that thinking. So there are so many issues that we have. One of the things that we need to do, as I said, we need to benefit from our land. The provincial federal government, they sit back, they invite industry in, they do nothing. Industry kicks millions and millions and millions to them. We have never been able to benefit from our own territories the way that they have. I want to also talk about the inherent authority that was mentioned earlier. Our inherent authority, when we call them inherent rights, that's what we need to do more of. That's what we need to foster from this organization. We need to help our communities build up their own environment so they can create an environment of success. We never at any point gave up our sovereignty, or we never gave up our inherent authority. You'll never find that written in a treaty. We are always masters of our own destiny, but we have to make choices on what we want to do about it. And this is why I'm here. If I didn't feel I had nothing to offer, I wouldn't be standing in front of you here right now presenting. You know, so there are a lot of things that I would like to share, a lot of ideas that I would like to share with your communities, but I have limited time up here, 10 minutes. It's like trying to fit an elephant into a Fiat 500. So before I finish here, I want to also just acknowledge the veterans, that we support that I support that, and I'd like to see an end to the injustice that they got from when they served Canada and how they were treated. So we need to support that as well. We need to see an end to that. You people in the front here, you calm down. You're getting too rowdy. So again, tomorrow I'll ask you for your support for second vice chief, and I want to thank you all for being here. Askumten.
Thank you. Call the nominator up for Bobby Cameron.
Hey, good afternoon. Just want to first of all say that I'm very honored to be here. Very honored to put this fine gentleman before you to serve as capacity of the second Vice Chief of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nation. He stands before you to continue the difficult work, the difficult challenges each and every one of our communities face. He has that ability, he has those skills and those abilities to do so. If you will, our communities, the vision of our leaders, the visions of our ancestors, they wanted us to live in harmony with one another, within our own communities, within our own territories, within our own treaty territories. And they wanted us to have that vision of cleanliness for our people. They wanted us to have really, really excellent health for our young people. They wanted us to have the best education for our young people. The cunning of the white man. And they wanted us to live and breathe our way of life, our ancestral way of life. By speaking our languages, by doing the things that our people lived together in harmony with one another. As we all know, that didn't happen that way. Everything changed with the Indian Act, and that suppressed, and it brought our people down. And we lost our languages. We lost a little bit of our way of life. But we are indomitable. We are survivors. We are humble. We are a strong nation. We're brave. And the gentleman before me has those abilities to bring us together that way. He knows and he lives treaty. He hunts for his people, himself, and all our communities. As a matter of fact, he goes and he knows each and every one of you. He goes to your communities and he takes your wisdom, takes your understanding, and he utilizes that within himself. So ladies and gentlemen, please, I humbly ask you in a humble way to put your X beside this gentleman's name tomorrow. my good friend, I present Vice Chief Bobby Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Michael Starr. Tansen wagamantik. Ilanate salutina. Aninsuwa nidoramagan. Haukona, haukola, haukota, natakiape. I say hello to all my relatives, friends here today. I want to thank Jeremy, Robin McLeod, and Heather Bear for putting their names forward. Because it's a lot of miles, it's a lot of travels, and it's a whole lot of a unique set of skills to go into a community, to go into a tribal council, and try and engage each chief and council on what it is that they're requiring, what it is that they're needing, what it is that they want advocated on their behalf. So I say thank you to my comrades, and more importantly for running a pretty respectful campaign. And we're paving the road for future leaders, because what it is our younger people are now seeing respectful campaigns happening at this level. And we want to continue that. As Indian people, that's how we are. As Indian people, that's how we're raised, to be respectful and kind to one another. So I thank you guys. From the start, when I got elected in 2011, I had the lands and resources file to our hunters and trappers and fishers in the north. The treaty right to hunting, fishing, and trapping was something near and dear to my heart. So I began the quest meeting with the different ministers. The Minister of Agriculture, Lyle Stewart. The Minister of Environment at the time was Ken Cheveldayoff. And what we wanted to do at that time was to have an MOU, to have an agreement that recognized those special treaty rights, those inherent treaty rights to hunting, fishing, and trapping. And we were darn close to getting that agreement signed with the Saskatchewan Environment Resource Management, because what we wanted at the FSIN to do, and for the CERM and the rest of Saskatchewan to realize, is they can't come into our communities and take our guns, ramsack the house, and take the meat. To our people in the north, speaking to an elder from Canoe Lake, Arm and Iron last night, it happens down in the south. To my Matakiape, Lauren Wadidika, who went through that here the last couple of weeks. That's our job. We're advocating for those treaty rights to be protected. And I take this job really seriously, and I'm committed to doing that. More recently, I now have the Bill C-33, the education file. Being a teacher for 8 years at my band level, and then being a counselor, and then moving on to this level, it's something that I'm going to go to bat for, and it's something that I'm never going to give up on, because it's near and dear to my heart. We cannot give up the control of our education on our First Nation schools. That's what Bill C-33 is going to do. We respect each tribal council and each First Nation's autonomy and their decision to make their own decisions at their band level. But I just wanted to say that real quick, because having read that Education Act bill so many times, and those of you that have read it, they make mention of Aboriginal and treaty rights in the preamble, the table of contents, we can call it, which is fine and dandy. But when you read further into detail into the actual body of that Bill C-33, nowhere does it say Aboriginal and treaty right to education. Nowhere does it say that the jurisdiction and control will and must remain with each chief and council and their membership. And that's our job at the FSIN, to continue lobbying for those kind of wordings to happen into the Education Act. The constant lobbying that we're doing, the networking that we're doing, and all the connections that we're making along the way, back in June before they went into summer recess. And that's our job at the FSIN, is to lobby, to advocate. So what we did at the FSIN level was we armed some of our MPs in the House of Commons with a one-page contract. And we agreed to everything that they said, the graduation rates, the paying of teachers at a higher salary, to the school infrastructure revenues being increased. Absolutely. We agreed to those type of things. We never were against those. But we asked Prime Minister Harper and Minister Valcourt, will you go further and sign this one-page contract that the FSIN provided for you? And the last two statements were this, that we, the Government of Canada, respect and acknowledge the inherent and treaty right to education. And the last item was that we, the Government of Canada, will acknowledge and will abide by each First Nations Chief and Council's jurisdiction over their First Nation school systems. When it was hand-delivered to him, and when he was questioned in the House of Commons about it, when he was being pressured by Jean Crowder and Carolyn Bennett, he ignored them, and minutes later they both walked out. And that was a good moment for us, because what it showed to the rest of Canada and to the Indian people of Saskatchewan was that this bill, C-33, First Nations Control of First Nations Education Act, was just a title. It's a title, so that's what we wanted to accomplish. And you know, all the lobbying that happened, no more, and kudos to our Island No More people out there and all our leaders across Canada for pressuring the government for at least halting that Bill C-33 for a little while. We have our own here running in Saskatchewan, Perry Bellegarde, and why I bring that up is because the Government of Canada is now saying we will not enter into negotiations or discussions until an AFN chief is elected. Sitting with Chief Perry Bellegarde the last few months, and the direction from our Education Commission chiefs, we prepared a package that we've gathered all this information from our communities out there, from our elders, from our chief and councils. And it's basically the jurisdiction portion, the acknowledgement and the respect for our inherent and treaty right to education. And we're going to provide this to the AFN chief that's elected, because that's what they're on record saying. I want to say also the Joint Task Force recommendation that we've made an agreement here in the last few years to improve employment and education outcomes. And one of them that's now offered in every First Nation schools, if you applied for that item, was the driver's license programs. It's now offered on all our schools if you applied for it. Because getting a driver's license is a hurdle for many of our students, and many of us for that matter. You know, so it's creating opportunity, it's giving our students a little extra that's going to make them succeed in life. The other item is the Microsoft license and agreement, where all of our schools that had computer hardware, computer software, we had to pay for all those computer programs, Microsoft Word, Excel, ACPAC, and all those other items. We had to pay for that all these years, whereas our counterparts never did. It was a free service. It's now a free service to every community in Saskatchewan, and more importantly, to every student that's using a computer. So it's something that we're doing at the FSIN, and we're going to continue it. I want to acknowledge our elders for the opening pipe ceremony this morning. Isaac, Armand, Peter Nippy. You know, you guys said some good prayers this morning. To our veterans, Rocky, Stephen, Hasler, Ray Sanderson. To our senators, Margaret Quayton, congratulations, Harry Cook, and Pat Johnstone. To everybody in attendance, I'm proud and I'm honored to say that I can call you my friends, because I've been to your communities. Right from Simon Job to Jean Biscayster, to Smokey in the back and Tony McNabb, to Charlene Head sitting here, To Annette Lonechild sitting over there in Cuthbert, Kashane. I take this job seriously, Nawagumantik. I'm proud to say that I can go to any community and sit down with your elder and call him my friend. And that's the best feeling on earth, to go into a community and sit down with an elder and say, I love you, my boy. I'll continue the work. The treaty protection, treaty implementation will continue for myself. When we go to the polls tomorrow morning, Nawagumantik, I humbly ask for your solid support, and you'll get that commitment, the dependability from Bobby Cameron. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. By way of accidents, stress, or natural causes, I will die for our treaties. Hi, hi.
Okay, thank you. Before I close nomination day, I just want to remind everybody, polls will open up at 8 a.m. At 9 a.m. on October 30th. It will be located in Gallery B room, and they will close at 11 o'clock sharp. So please be early, be there to get in. We only have 2 hours to vote, and the voting room is upstairs. Thank you, and see you tomorrow. That includes nomination day. Have a good night. Tomorrow.
One more thing. Just a reminder to the chiefs before you leave, this room will be converted back to a room tonight, so you are required to take your materials along with you and bring them back for a reconvening of the assembly tomorrow after the election. Also, there will be a speaker tomorrow at 12 o'clock, and lunch will be served shortly after, right here in this room. So once again, to all the chiefs, Please take your materials with you from your tables, as this room will be cleared tonight. Thank you.
Perfect.